this cute co-ed comes in. She knew people around me, but I didn't know her. Then she kind of looks at me, and her first words to me were,
I said, "Are you Brad?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Oh," I said, "you don't know this yet, but I'm going to be your wife."
Welcome to the 2% Factor podcast, where we explore the small things that make a massive difference in someone's journey and story. On today's episode, we have Monica and Brad Culpepper joining us. Welcome, Monica and Brad.
Hi, thank you. Good to see you.
good to see you, Dan.
Great.
Glad to be here.
Great. Yeah, great to have both of you on. I'm really, really excited about unpacking your story and your journey. Such an interesting story to share with everybody today. A couple that we have on here, obviously, that have been married 32 years, which is an accomplishment, a significant accomplishment, and who met back in college. And then from there, their journey really started together, and then moved over to the NFL, and 9 seasons in the NFL that we love to get into that. Together as a family, and all the things that you did during that time, both of you professionally, and then post NFL, preparing for that next journey for both of you as well, and creating one of the most successful law firms in the country and in Florida. So really excited to talk about your story here today. So welcome again. Let's kind of back up to University of Florida. What year was that, by the way, that you guys both went to University of Florida, correct?
We did. I think Monica grew up in Central Florida, and I grew up in North Florida, and we both ended up at the University of Florida in Gainesville. I was there 1 year before you, but it was in the late 80s.
When it was, you went to University of Florida in what, 87? You were in the recruiting class in 1987. I went to University of Florida in 1988, and we met our junior year in college.
So during that era when you guys were at UF, was that when the team was kind of on the up at UF, or what was the era then?
Steve Spurrier came my junior year, which was 90, was his first season, and 91. We won the conference both seasons, and it was the first time the University of Florida had ever done that. I met Monica about 6 months before my junior season, so we actually met in 1990.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that era. That was before Steve Spurrier went to, did he go to Arkansas after that, I think?
No, I thought he went to South Carolina.
Yeah.
South Carolina, sorry. Yeah, South Carolina.
But there's
Yeah.
a rich history of family, being that we're both from Florida. My brother went to University of Florida. My sister went to University of Florida. Brad's father and grandfather went to University of Florida. His mother, his brother, his sister. So there's a large path of everybody going to be Florida Gators. And so we didn't know each other when we first got to college, but I kind of went on my way, was president of my pledge class, and then vice president of the sorority, then president of the sorority, then went on to be homecoming queen at University of Florida, and kind of got involved doing my stuff. And Brad, of course, busy full time, as you know what college sports are, playing football, and he was a Sigma Chi. And so it was kind of strange that we went to college at the same exact time for 3 years and never saw each other on campus and never met each other until our junior year. So kind of.
Yeah, we ran in similar circles, but had never crossed paths. We both knew people that each other knew, and I had actually seen pictures of her, but she was dating some people or what have you, and I didn't really know her. One other person that's currently the second baseman at Florida is our nephew. It's my sister's son, Cade Kurland, is carrying on the tradition. None of my children went to Florida, but anyway, so Cade's a little second baseman, really good player on the national runner-up team from last year. Baseball
Nice.
team.
Got it. What were you guys majoring in back then?
I was a history major. I'd planned on kind of going to law school, and I love reading and history, so I could either be a professor or a lawyer, I reckon. So.
And I was pre-med in college and was certain that I was going to go to medical school until I met this dashing, amazing guy, and decided, okay, wait a minute, and kind of the way everything meandered and transitioned. Brad got drafted by the Vikings, and it was like, man, okay, he signed a 2-year contract there. Medical school's 4 years. I don't know if I can do that or not. So I changed, and ended up going to physical therapy school at University of Minnesota while he was playing for the Vikings. So,
Got it.
and that
Got
may
it.
all be backtracked later, and that sort of thing throughout kind of how we met and what happened. But
Okay.
um,
All right. So, I mean,
Yeah,
right out of the gate,
you skipped a lot of stuff, but okay.
yeah, well,
yeah,
I didn't
I'm
want you
gonna,
to be
I'm
confused.
gonna
It kind
back
of took.
us up. I'm gonna back us up. Don't worry. But I get it. It's easy to get into it. It's a fun story. Um, but right out of the gate, I think where I'm going with it is you two were driven, right? I mean, you have pre-med, you know what you're trying to do. You want to become, go into the medical field, become a doctor, go down that road. All the other accomplishments, Monica, that you were talking about in terms of being in leadership, and then you got Brad, who's full time in one of the best football programs in the country. At that time, I would imagine you guys were top five, top 10, Brad, I would think,
Yes,
under Spurrier. Yeah.
we were.
So super, super competitive environment. I remember watching back in those days. Um, and so you two already as individuals were kind of crafting your path, right? I mean, at that point, and then you met. Tell the story of how you two met, and Brad, what happened before that in terms of the boating accident, what kind of created that opportunity in the bar that you met at.
Well, it's quite frankly that this boating accident led to a lot of things in my life. Obviously we didn't plan on the boat sinking.
We'll start back in high school.
I will, but it led to the best decision I've ever made in my life, which would be, marrying my wife. Everything else is secondary to that, including my kids and everything else. So, I mean, that was the first and foremost, or the most important decision I ever made. But what led to us first meeting, like we had said earlier, we'd run in a bunch of circles, but never run into each other. About a month before we met, I grew up in the Panhandle on a stilt island, and it's called Dog Island. It's still there. You can Google it, and it's a 7 mile island, about 3 miles off the coast in the Panhandle. No bridge to it, and we were my father and I and his law partner, a guy named Ralph Haben. My father's name is Bruce Culpepper. We were out, all three out scuba diving, about 20 miles out from the island house. And around 3 in the afternoon, we went down we were down about 10 minutes, and I was uncomfortable, couldn't see much around. It was not very good visibility. I went to the surface, and I'll be dang if 3 feet of the boat is sticking out of the water while the 27 other feet of the boat is underwater and it's going down fast.
Wow.
My dad, Pop, and Ralph were still underwater. My dad came up. There was a boat about a mile away. He came up, and we were both kind of astonished on we can't believe the boat sunk. And we started to try to swim to that boat that was about a mile away, and it took off. And so at that point, we couldn't see. You lose sight of land at about 7 miles, so we couldn't see anything. So luckily we're both Eagle Scouts, I guess, and we were able to kind of track the sun sets in the west. We kept that, and then the sun went down, and the stars came out. And we kind of followed the North Star, thinking if we can swim that way, we'll eventually come to shore. We were actually thinking how far the English Channel was, but we were swimming together. Kind of dropped our tanks and dropped our regulators and all that, so we'd be a little bit lighter. But the water was about 60 degrees, was really cold. And but a long story short, middle of the night, about 2 a.m., we got rescued. Um, they started a big search party for us because nobody ever came home. So we all got rescued. There
Yeah.
was a big story. There was a big story the next week in the Gainesville Sun. And Monica happened to doing rehab. She'd hurt her knee or had ACL surgery from an accident. I think you wrecked a bike or something.
Right, in a bike race.
But she was rehabbing with a guy named Emmett Smith, who actually was a freshman with myself. We were there. We were both going into our junior years. Um, and he was reading the paper, and Monica saw it and said, "Well, what are you reading about?" And she saw it I was all sunburned and bleached hair, and it was a favorable picture of me. And Emmett said to her, "He is my buddy Brad. He's the type of guy you'd want to marry. He's student body vice president, and real sharp and A student and all that stuff like that." Well, then fast forward again, about a week after that, I was at a bar where we met called Balls of all places,
Right.
and
I've been there.
yeah, and
Right on
so
University Avenue.
another buddy, an All American Italian.
It's the bar in Gainesville, right? It's where you go after all the
Yes, it
games.
is.
Yeah.
There, but
Back then, it was $5 all you could drink. So you could go, and I'm sure they gave you some sort of beer that's not even made anymore. I don't know what, but you could go, and for $5, you could have all you could drink with great music too.
So anyway, this cute co-ed comes in. She actually knew, like I said, she knew people around me, but I didn't know her. She's talking to my friend. Then she kind of looks at me, and her first words to me were,
Oh, you don't want to tell it?
"Well, you can say."
Well, I looked at him and I thought, wait a minute, that's the same guy that was just on the cover of the paper with the boating accident that Emmett was reading about. And I said, "Are you Brad?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Oh," I said, "You don't know this yet, but I'm going to be your wife." And I spun around and I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa,
No,
wait a second."
yeah, you talk about 2%. Yeah, I mean, this
There's
was,
so much there, right?
yeah, I mean, this,
So much there. So I looked at him and I thought, I think that's the same guy.
no, but when you walked away, she was walking back to her table, and I was like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa." Hot stuff. I didn't say that, but I was thinking that. I was like, "Oh my God, you're super, super hot." Before we get married, how about we go to lunch tomorrow? And you kind of said, okay.
All right, sorry, I hate to interrupt. I have to ask. So Monica hears Monica's rehabbing to an injury with the Dallas Cowboys running back Emmett Smith.
Yes.
Yeah, but he's at Florida at the time.
In Florida.
So at this time, yeah,
So Emmett
he's not
Smith
aware that
introduced us.
it's
If you ever see Emmett in an airport, you can say, "I know Brad Monica," and he'll say, "That is the greatest setup I've ever had of all time." I mean, it's so
right. I
crazy, our
mean,
life, what's happened. Like, even talking about it, there's so many things that have happened. But my freshman year in college, I went potluck. I got assigned a roommate from Fort Pierce, Florida. Her name was Felicia O'Neill. She happened to know Emmett. So I met him when I was 17 years old, my freshman year in college. Then hadn't seen him in a few years, other than I'd see him on the football field run touchdowns, as everybody in the world had. And I got in a boating accident on New Year's with another guy I was dating down in Palm Beach.
Bicycle.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, did I say boating?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about you on the boat.
Right.
But a bike race accident, and I tore my ACL. But being that I was pre-med, and you can't stop, you got to keep going. The course load is crazy. My parents said, "Well, rather than withdraw from school, because it's a pretty big surgery, and 34 years ago is a lot different than now." So I didn't want to withdraw from college and go to physical therapy and take a whole semester off. So my parents said, "Well, let's figure out who's the best surgeon, orthopedic surgeon at University of Florida, and we'll do it there." So we went to Dr. Indelicato,
He
who
was
was
a
the
team
team doctor
Mhm.
for all of University of Florida football. So I went and had knee surgery with him. Then I went to physical therapy with the team physical therapist. And a lot of athletes do hours for grades and different disciplines. But part of what Emmett was doing was some hours or service hours in this physical therapy center.
He was doing therapy.
Yeah, or he was doing therapy there?
Correct.
Okay, I can't remember.
All right.
So anyway,
He had like an ankle or something. It was
right. So he's in doing physical therapy. Now I haven't seen him in 2 years since I met him my freshman year. So he was like, "Monica." I was like, "Emmett." And we kind of put it together. And then I said, "Well, what are you reading? Who's the cute guy on the cover of the paper?" And he said, "Oh my gosh, this is my boy Brad." He and I play with Brad. And of course I knew that. And he just said, "You got to meet him. He's the best." He went on telling funny stories about them kind of going head to head in high school and that sort of thing. So long and short of it, we meet.
it's really I love to break these things down. In particular, a lot of times when you reflect back how threaded things are together, right? I mean, the fact that you're Your family recommended you look into who's the right surgeon. You go through University of Florida through the athletics channels. Um, Emmett Smith has no idea he's going to be a Hall of Famer and one of the best running backs of all time at this point. He's doing some rehab himself. And you guys end up chatting about his good friend Brad, which creates the moment
Who was
in
literally in a boating accident 24 hours
right,
before I saw him, to be on the
right,
cover of the paper to say, you need to meet this guy, to go to a
right.
bar Tuesday night or Thursday night, 4 days later, because that was Ball's big night, Thursday night, and see Brad and put it together and then say what I said is even crazier.
Right.
Well, you
Well,
didn't really tell me about your bum knee either. I picked her up to go to lunch the next day. She had a huge knee brace on.
Yeah, you don't wear that out at night.
I was like, "Well, I didn't see that last night."
What
that's too
happened?
funny. Well, and I think there's a couple of things there. One is Monica, you saying what you said, like that opened the door, right there. You
Right,
recognizing that moment and you feeling the way you felt and making the comment. And then you turned around and you left. And then Brad not letting you go and saying, wait a minute, let's grab lunch tomorrow, right? The reason I'm interested in this kind of stuff is because, there's always these conversations about, is it fate? Is it meant to be? And then sometimes where does it come into life of where you made it happen too, right? And the combination of those things occurring at the same time. I mean, this feels like fate in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways,
right.
you all made it happen by your energy and actions, taking the reins of saying, I want to meet this person and I'm gonna spend time with them.
We went to lunch and it was funny because it's an ongoing process for weeks and months. So the physical therapist, Marty Hugel, that was my physical therapist, was so fond of Brad and so fond of his family. And so when I said, you're not going to believe what just happened, and he was such an instrumental part too in saying everything that just happened on lunch is exactly what I would expect and follow through. He's an amazing person, and it was his
I had them all snowed.
affirmation of the whole situation too that made it safe. Because you're young and you say something outlandish like that, you think, okay, now I'm going to lunch, and then, okay, I hope this guy's okay. But
Yeah, who
I
am I
think
going with?
what? Yeah,
Who am I going with? What did I just agree
exactly.
to? Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
the other thing is we both had kind of significant others. We were dating other people at the time, and we quickly, after about a month, said, we need, and they were not in the same town, uh, neither one. And we kind of went away after a month of seeing each other, and we're like, okay, let's go see what's up with that. And if we come back and we're both single, let's make it happen. So we both left, and you went, met with your friend. I met with my friend and
Yeah,
came back and said, I think I'm single. And she said, I think I am too. I said, well, let's not be single anymore.
right.
Love it. All right. So the partnership is now made, right? It's Monica and Brad. This is happening. So let's migrate to kind of what happened from there.
Quite frankly, there's a lot of my, I don't know if it's happenstance or what. Played my junior and senior years at Florida. Was very successful. Was consensus All American as a senior, but I was small. I was only like 255 pounds as a defensive tackle. Um, didn't get invited to the combine, even though I was perennial first team All SEC and all that other stuff. The Vikings drafted me in part. Number one, they liked what I did on film, um, but they had also heard about the boating accident. I swear, because I talked to the guy who I think it was Gil,
Yeah,
and he said he goes, "You survived like 10 to 12 hours out in the ocean, and we
in
figured
the middle of the night.
no, right, we figured someone with that kind of toughness and tenacity would at least give us a good look in camp." So back then there were 12 rounds and I was a 10th round pick. So I think they drafted me and I wasn't a free agent because they said, this guy was out in the ocean for 12 hours. Heck, he's tough. He'll give our offensive line a good look all during camp, but clearly he won't make the team. But I think I was drafted there kind of because of this boat accident too. And
Right.
I
That's so
guess
interesting.
No, it is, I got to a Minnesota Viking team that had five Hall of Famers. We had Johnny Randall, whom I played behind, Randall McDaniel, Gary Zimmerman, Chris Dolman, and Chris Carter. Jack Del Rio was a
Wow.
linebacker. Rich Gannon was a quarterback. I mean, Roger Craig may go in the Hall of Fame. He was there as a running back, but I had no business making that team. There was a lot of depth at the defensive line, and I mean, I would come home. We were up in a camp at
Mankato State
Mankato State University,
University.
which is, I think Thielen went there. He's the only person that the receiver for the Vikings now. But anyway, I would come. I would go to practice, and literally after morning practice, if there was 30 team plays, I would get one and a half maybe. And I would call Monica and be like, "Oh my God, honey, I've been here 10 days. I haven't had any reps on all, on significant reps." And I was like, I think I'm just going to quit and drive home. And she's like, "Don't do that." She goes, "You never know what's going to happen. Stick it through." I go, "Look, I
As
got,
we were married at the time. So we both graduated high school or graduated college and got married
yeah."
right away before he left and
Before
went
the
got
draft
drafted by
happened.
Minnesota. Right.
It's actually like a
Okay.
week after the draft.
And
We got married.
did you know,
No,
Brad, that did you know when you were in college that you would make the NFL? Were you planning on making the NFL? Was that a
No,
dream?
what Brad didn't tell you is he was the number one scholar athlete in the nation. They call it the Campbell Award. And so I think what kind of pushed us along to get married too was the Campbell Award winner. Um, all of your education and expenses, living expenses are paid for, and it goes to one guy each year. I mean, I think Tim Tebow's won it,
Peyton
Peyton
Manning.
Manning's won it. I mean, there's some unbelievable super studs that have won it, but we kept thinking, well, um, all of your school will be paid for. And if I had to, I could delay medical school. I could work. At that time, I was working in a research lab and just thought, when you love that person more than you love yourself, and I think that's when you figure out who am I supposed to marry when it starts becoming less about you and more about them. That's your guy. And
Yeah.
so we just felt like we love each other so much, we'll figure it out.
Right.
So I think all along we thought, oh my gosh, you got drafted by the Vikings. This is great. All right, well, let's give that a whirl. And if it doesn't work out, we will go to law school because that's kind of what your career path mind is right now, anyway.
Yeah, I was in the process of taking LSAT at the same time. So if I wasn't drafted, or I knew that I would get a shot. I knew somebody
Right.
would at least give me a shot.
Well, pro day, everybody came to see you and that kind of stuff.
But
So,
but it's
right.
in the NFL. I mean, you got
It's
gazillion
crazy.
players, and it's really hard to make. And it's hard to make it stick.
Yeah, I mean the
But
percentages are so small. That's why I was
So small.
well, it's
curious.
like
So small.
Yeah,
a high school starting senior or something. I think it's one in like 15,000 is able to play one snap in the pros.
right.
But what I was going to say is that so I got drafted there, was getting no reps. Monica kind of said, "Look, you got to stick it out until they cut you." But 2 days before the very first preseason game, Johnny Randall tore a pec. And I was thinking, oh, this is my big shot. And so the next morning, I got up to be on the starting group, and they moved a defensive end in front of me. Uh, and so, but then that defensive end in that practice, like he banged up his knee. So then I was like, all right, now I'm gonna get my shot. And then they kind of moved an offensive lineman in front of me from the other side. I'm like, wait a
That
minute.
is not true. The O line.
So anyway, he couldn't pick it up, but we scrimmaged. I think the very first game was against the Buffalo Bills. No,
Right,
no,
okay.
Buffalo Bills. And I started as a preseason in the first preseason game just because everybody else around me was hurt, and I ended up getting a sack. And not only that, at the end of the preseason, I led the NFL with 5 sacks in the preseason. Now that's kind of like leading the minors in home runs because all the good players, don't play enough to get 5 sacks. But I was able to take advantage of my opportunity.
Right, and they take notice, right? They're looking for the standouts during the preseason.
No, for sure. I mean, I held my own, and I was the lowest round pick in 1990. It was 1992 was
Right.
the first season. I was the lowest round pick to start on opening day. I started against Green Bay Packers in Green Bay against Dan Majowski, and it was his last game because the next game, a little whippersnapper Brett Favre came in for him and ended up Wally Pipping him. basically, because then he ended up playing all the rest of the game. But
Right.
so anyway, that boating accident led me to go to the Vikings. It led me to make the NFL, and then
Led you to your wife.
no, so it was a good thing. I made the best of a
Yeah.
kind of a more awkward deal because it was no fun when it happened.
Well, what's interesting is people talk a lot about, the growth happens through trying times, or the growth or the good things happen, as you come out of adversity. I mean, these are real life examples of serious adversity. I mean, that boating accident, unfortunately, we all know stories of people who haven't made it through that.
Yeah.
And and then to that, for that to be turned into something with such positive examples is pretty incredible. So you're in the NFL. You've got a plan as a couple in terms of both of your educations and careers going forward. You don't know that you're going to make the NFL, so you're planning on continuing forward with education with the Campbell Award, but you're giving this a shot, and you make the team, right? So
Yeah.
what when you look at, I'm curious about this. When you look at making the team, what in your mind were, a 2% factor moment or two that was the difference between you making the NFL or not making the NFL?
That's making the NFL. It's a combination of a lot of things. I mean, you've got to, like I said, as far as like your opportunities, if you're not a first round pick or second round pick or third round pick, you're going to get a small crack if you even get one. I've known good players that have never gotten that crack, that can't make it just because they don't do it. But you got to take advantage of anything and able to get on the field. But then when you get on the field, you've got to be productive. So you always got to keep your head in the game and understand the game for when you get that opportunity. Um, so I played my first two seasons in Minnesota, and then I was released going into my third season, and that was probably the toughest time because my Monica, like you talked about the education, she never stopped doing what she was doing, and she had to go back and get a physical therapy degree because she had planned on being a doctor. But then kind of my NFL situation derailed, and she kind of took a back seat. But she didn't discontinue her education. She went to the University of Minnesota to continue to get her physical therapy degree, and I got released and picked up by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So my third year in the NFL, we had a kind of a nice place up in Minnesota.
Yeah, the third year, I was still in
Right.
Minnesota going to physical therapy school. Brad and I would both get up at 6:30 in the morning, and I'd go and get on a bus from where we lived and go into downtown Minneapolis, where the U was, and go to PT school. And he would go to the Minnesota Vikings, and we'd meet back in the afternoons at 5, 6 o'clock after my school and his work, and just
Right.
kind of kept doing our thing.
But then I get released, and my next day, my job is now down in Tampa. And she can't really drive. I don't want her to drive. We talked about it, but doesn't make any sense to drop out of school. So she actually stayed in Minnesota. I came down here and I said, look, I lived I mean, it was about the size of my library where I lived. I didn't care. We had a nice place in Minnesota. I was like, stay there, put me in some dingy place. I don't really care.
Yeah, he
And
lived in a little one-bedroom studio, and I think if he was sitting in the family room of that place,
one TV.
the TV was there. But when he went to bed every night, he shimmied the table and twisted it in the doorway so he could lay in bed and watch TV at night there. And so I would go to PT school from Monday to Friday, and as soon as class got out, I would race to the Minneapolis St. Paul airport and get on a plane and fly to Tampa and see my husband. And if Brad had a home game, that was a big bonus because I would see him Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But if Brad had an away game, I would only see him Friday, a half a day Saturday, because they would take off on Saturday after practice to go play on Sunday and not get home till Sunday night in the middle of the night. So I would use that time to cook all kinds of casseroles and make things that he liked. So it was there in the freezer all week while we were separated with school and work. And then I would hop back on a plane Monday morning on the 5:30 a.m. flight, land, and drive straight to PT school. And we did that every week
Yeah.
for the season.
And I think after that season, I started every game, led the team in sacks. So I started digging roots here with the Buccaneers, and we were really bad at that point. I remember calling Monica when I first got down here, and I was like, "I got good news, bad news," and she goes, "Well, what's the bad news?" And I go, "Well, they're terrible," because I'm coming from a pretty good Minnesota
Yeah,
team.
we made
She
the
goes,
playoffs
she
two
goes,
years in a
no.
row
So
in
she goes,
Minnesota.
well, then what's the good news? I said, they're so terrible, I can start. Um, so, right. But it was
Who
after
was
that,
coach at that time, Brad?
Sam Weich,
Okay. All right. And
Sam
who was
Weich
quarterback?
and Floyd,
Craig Erickson.
Craig Erickson was, and Craig was good, and then Trent Dilfer came in
Mm,
after that.
okay.
And then Tony Dungy came down like in my third year with the Bucks. It was like my fifth season, and that was the turnaround. A lot like Spurrier to Florida, Tony Dungy came down, and I had 4 years with Tony, and we ended up doing really well. And then right before he left, and then Gruden came in, they won a Super Bowl. But I would say after that first year in Tampa, which was my third year in the NFL, I went back up to Minnesota because Monica in that spring was, yeah, she was graduating, and we went up there. And then that was the point when I said, and I, did whatever I did. I would go bowling I'd go work out,
You
but I was
took
like,
cooking classes
yeah,
at Byerly's.
I
Brad
did.
Johnson was the quarterback then.
Yeah.
And it's funny. The NFL is like this fraternity that nobody else can get in unless you play in it. So even though I was gone,
Right.
so many of the defensive linemen would still call and say, "All right, I'm keeping an eye on you. Meet me." Henry Thomas would always say every Thursday night, "Meet me at the Palomino Steakhouse downtown from school. I want to take you to eat. I got to text Brad or call Brad and let him know you're doing
There's no
A-okay."
text back
No
then.
text. And then Brad Johnson
Hmm.
was the quarterback, and he lived in the same apartment complex because he wasn't married, and I helped find him one because Brad and I were married. And so everybody kind of kept an eye on each other the whole time. So when Brad came back, they would still golf and do things during the day, but I think he was kind of bored.
No, and this was the off season. I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the LSAT and let me start going to law school because, you
Mm,
know, it was kind of an eye opener getting released after my second year and going into
yeah.
my third year. I didn't know it was coming, and it's actually like they released me right before like opening day. It was really
It was
late,
odd.
and so it's like, oh my god, although I knew it wouldn't last long, I or possibly wouldn't last long. You don't really think about it until it kind of you get
Yeah.
guillotined.
Right.
So I was like, I don't want to be ill prepared for this if it happens to me again. Well, luckily it didn't happen for another 7 years. But I applied to the University of Florida, and they gave me an opportunity to go to law school every January to May in the off season, and then of course in the fall I did full time football, so I couldn't do law school. But after 6 years, in like 2000, I was coming to the end of my rope on both law school and football, and I had some opportunities. The Jets had me come up. I finished my last year with the Bears in 2000, and was a free agent and was contemplating what my future is going to be. I had two young children. Um, I was a semester away from my law degree, and Seattle called me and the Jets called me, and I remember coming home.
And I was pregnant with Honor.
Right, and I with my daughter, and I remember coming home, and this was another big decision. A guy by the name of John Morgan, who has Morgan and Morgan law firm. Um,
I mean, that's the
he
largest in the
he
country.
he made it known that he wanted to hire me, and I was kind of like, you know what? I think I'm ready to move out of this football thing and move straight into law, and I think now's the time. And I weighed 285 pounds at that point, and I came home in May and told Monica, I was like, I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, the kids were riding that tractor around in circles, and I think I was pregnant with her.
Yeah, you were.
6 months pregnant, and he just came home from working out, which was a perfect setup. If you're in the NFL and you're going to law school or something in the off seasons, being that we went to University of Florida, he still had a place to work out.
Yeah.
So you can still do all that's involved and not really need to be in the city where you are. And then he just walked in and said, "Hey, I think I'm retiring today."
Yeah, well, huge decision, and 2% factor at that moment. Coming back to law school for a second. So, Monica, were you done? You had
I
already
was done.
got your degree in physical therapy. You moved down to Tampa. You
Correct.
guys
And then
were
during
you're
that time, so it was great. University of Minnesota could not have been more fantastic. They made all my clinicals instead of in Minneapolis. They knew Brad was in Tampa. They called their resources in Tampa, Florida, and I could do all my clinical work there, and they'd send the grades back up to Minnesota. So my foot was already in the door with
yeah.
places in Tampa. So the whole time,
And in Gainesville.
yeah, and in Gainesville. So while Brad was playing in Tampa, I worked at Shriners Children's Hospital, which was an amazing place.
Mhm.
And then when we went to Gainesville in the off seasons, would work at Shands Hospital, which is a huge teaching hospital on in Gainesville on campus that services the medical school, and I would work there while he was in law school. And we waited 6 years to have kids. So at that point, I'd already worked 4 or 5 years, and at one point, Brad came home once again from
Right.
practice and said, "You know what? I think we should have kids." And I don't think either one of us had thought about whether it was the right time or if we
That
wanted them or we didn't want them.
that
But
was a mistake.
that's not true. It's not a kids.
Um,
But he said, "Hey, I think we should have kids," and I thought, "Okay, that sounds great." So
Yeah. What was it? I kind of want to dig into both of you both are very driven people, right? Before you met and then
right,
during while the time you guys have been a couple, what is it do you think that is inside of each of you? I mean, if you look at like some of your pattern to success, you guys really make a plan and you execute to a plan, and then you also pivot when you need to. But I'm curious if you have any thoughts around like why is that for you? Was it your upbringings? Was it what is it that in your that you could share that you think it would be helpful for people that are listening?
I can't speak for Monica, but I can speak for Monica in the sense that we both had terrific parents, and they instilled a lot of the drive, and they're still all four are still alive
married.
and still married. So I think that gave us a roadmap for a strong family institution. But then once we got married, we really relied only on each other more than anything else. And I think we drove each other and had each other's back no matter what. I knew I was able to be successful in the NFL because I knew I had her propping me up. And no matter what happened, if I got released, if I got whatever, she would be there to help us transition to do whatever it was we needed to do to be successful at whatever we were going to do. So I think relying on each other and unconditionally gave us support to be successful in whatever we were doing. I promise you, I mean, maybe I would have played 2 or 3 years in the NFL without her, but with her, I was able to play a long time and then was able to transition into becoming a lawyer. Um, I was a lawyer at Morgan and Morgan for 5 years, and this was 2007. There was a major decision we had to make together to say, you know what, I think I need to do this on my own. I think I can manage my own law firm. And now Culpepper Curland has been in existence since '07. Now it's 2023, and that was a massive decision that I could never have done without support from her. But I think initially it all came from our own families. We've got driven parents that are successful, and it's kind of you want to mirror that. And I think that's what we did with our own kids. I mean, I
Right.
think we tried to
Brett,
instill
but let me
positivity
ask
with.
you a question. Was it when you went into becoming a lawyer, did you always have the dream of having your own firm?
I don't think so.
No?
Did you?
No, I mean, I didn't know. No, it's like I don't know that I thought that far in advance. I was happy to get a good job. I knew that I wanted to have a decent transition from NFL to another career, and that is very difficult if you play a substantial amount of time. Now, some of the contracts are stupid money now, but they weren't
Right.
really that way. I mean, back then, I mean,
Yeah.
Troy Aikman made. I remember he had like a 5 year, $12 million, contract, which was outlandish. Most good
Right.
players made
Crazy at
five.
that time, right?
Most good players
Right.
made like 500 to 1.5 a year, 1.5 million.
Yeah.
So, the transition, and quite frankly, the majority of players that play now don't make the stupid money you read about. That's just a small few. But I know that a lot of players have had a lot of trouble when they leave football. You're so structured with everything you do, and then you have nothing to do. And if you still live the lifestyle of, Yeah, that's one thing is I didn't know how long my NFL career would last, and we lived very smart during that whole 9 years. Now that I've got a stable income, we live a little bit higher on the hog. But
But
during the
I'll tell you
time,
this, he didn't tell you. So each team elects a player rep every year, and this player rep is sort of the representative of the team, and you go to an annual meeting with other player
for our
reps
union, we
for
have
the
NFL.
players union. So Brad represented. He was elected by his teammates to be the player rep in Hawaii. We would go to these meetings, and your wives were flown out too, and it was union meetings for the Bucks.
Mhm.
So we did that. I don't know. Were you player rep for 5 years or so?
Something like that.
And one of the biggest things that they talk to the wives about also and the players is what are you going to do after this? You
Yeah.
know, and the divorce rate in the NFL
It's high.
is like over
No,
60%
it's
when
like
it's
it's like
over, and
80%.
it's maybe 80 now. But they kept talking to us about this every year. And, they would talk to the wives and say, you're going to know when his career is ending before he does. You're going to
Interesting.
notice that the injuries are going to last. He's not going to be, he's on a cane on Sunday after the game because of turf toe, and Monday he's hobbling around, and Tuesday they're off, but Wednesday he's back in pads and practice. Well, you're going to realize these injuries start compounding and lasting a little longer, and you're missing a game. And ladies, that is the sign that your husband's career is getting ready to end, and you need to be prepared.
You guys were listening. We were taking note of that.
For sure, and talk to anybody about, but I think that's part of why you just kind of keep your eye on the prize that we're doing this right now, and it's amazing, and we're going to maximize every bit of Brad's potential. And man, we loved our teammates, and we hosted Christmas and all the parties and card games and D-line dinner once a week, and we lived the NFL to its absolute fullest and played in everybody's celebrity golf tournaments in the off seasons, and our friendships and the times and the things that we did were amazing. But I think always in the back of our minds was resonating, this could end tomorrow because you really are only as good as your last practice. And let me tell you, the NFL day off is Tuesday. And if you happen to go in and get treatment, you're going to see all the guys they've invited in that they're working out to replace you. Someone that's younger and costs less money,
Wow.
that sort of thing. And so, um, I think we've just always sort of planned
Yeah.
that you're going to go to law school and you're going to be a lawyer. And then lo and behold, 9 years went by and you had the law degree.
No,
Yeah.
that was the smartest thing I ever did because my transition, I mean, literally went from retired to employed as an attorney. That void is the biggest problem for these guys. You're relatively young. You're 33 years old if you've had a great career, but you've got so much more life to live. And I don't care how much money you made as a professional athlete, if you don't have a reason to get up and kind of be productive, you're going to be miserable to be around. You're going to kick your dog. You're going to, yell at your spouse and your kids, and you got to have purpose. And I think it's hard for a lot of guys who don't plan for their future to really fill that void. Because there's only so much golf you can play. There's only so much,
I agree with you. I think it's that planning for that gap. You know what's going to happen, but you got to
Yeah.
put in the work, right? I mean, didn't you say it took you 6 years to?
Listen, every mini camp, I would have mini camps in May,
Yeah.
and Rich McKay was our GM at the time, and Rich went to law school. He would give me his office because we had, 2 practices a day, but I had exams at the same time. So I would go
Yeah.
from practice with the ice things on my knees into Rich McKay's office and study for my, constitutional law
Yeah.
exam.
Which
So
was on Monday.
no, it was
right.
it was real difficult, but I made it work.
I think to me that's a big takeaway in the story, though. I mean, if I was sitting here talking with someone and we were just talking about the NFL, because that's such a tremendous achievement in itself, it was the planning that you also did during that time, and the choices and decisions you made during that time, and the sacrifices that you made during that time to plan for the future. I'm curious, was there, when you look back, both of you, whether it was during the NFL time, was there a major influence or a major moment where someone influenced you, whether it was a GM of a team or a coach or a wife in a circle, somebody, was there any moment for you when you look back that made a big impact on helping you with figuring out your life going forward?
When I was released by the Vikings, I was super surprised, and actually a lot of my teammates were too. And I'll never forget when I was walking out to I had my sack of my garbage bag of stuff, and Jack Del Rio um, came kind of running out to me, and he said, Pep, come here, look at me. He goes, look. And Jack was the starting linebacker and was a stud, and I played cribbage with him and Husky and all these different guys. But Jack was like, Brad, I've been cut 2 times. Okay. The Dallas Cowboys cut me and the Chiefs cut me. He goes, and I was able to make a Pro Bowl here. He goes, you're a great player. And he goes, keep your head up. There's going to be all kinds of teams that want you. Because at that point I'm depressed. I don't really know how it works. I'm like, oh my God, they just cut me. I don't have a
Oh
job.
my gosh, I got home
And
from school
and I
and
just
I
remember,
thinking, what are we gonna do?
he gave me just support enough to be able to, went home to Monica, and I was like, well, Jack said he'd been cut and he got picked up. And so it just gives me a little bit more, it just made me feel better about what had happened and to be a pro. And I'll be dang if the Bucks didn't pick me up the next day. And I think
It said, okay, get on an
No.
airplane. There's a plane ticket and you're leaving
They were
today.
like-
And by the way, pack your things. You're not coming home.
right, no, there were like 8
You're like,
teams.
I'm on my way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
There are like 8 teams that try to pick me up on waivers, and the way waivers works is the worst of the bunch get you. But which for me was a godsend. But I think about my NFL career, and that was kind of a pivotal moment. I think I did the same. I remember when Casey Weldon, who's a friend of mine, he got released, and I remember what Jack had done to me, and I remember calling Casey and kind of saying the same kind of thing, like, "Buddy, this is the best thing ever happened to me was getting released because now I'm a starter here." But so it's kind of like you try to pass it on.
And Brad's agent, Tim Irwin, and I think Tim must have played, I don't know, 15 or 16
For
years.
Tennessee,
He told Brad
yeah,
that he went to law school in the off season.
he's a judge now,
And he's a judge in Tennessee, but he sort of said, you can go to law school during the off seasons. That's what Sharon and I did. And I think that was sort of like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't need to wait. All right. So we kind of looked into it from him saying, and he became Brad's agent at the end of your
I
career.
was extremely lucky to get drafted by this veteran team, and I literally would go to practice and learn so much just with Anthony Carter, Chris Carter. There was amazing
Oh, the
football
Dolmans
players.
were fantastic.
But they all were generous on their wisdom, so that I felt like when I went to Tampa, I became all of a sudden, even though I was like my 3rd or 4th year, I kind of became the elder statesman and had a lot of wisdom that was imparted on me from the Minnesota Vikings players around me.
But I think that's because Brad, he wouldn't tell you, but he's really smart. And so he would watch and he would learn and was not afraid to play cards with all the Pro Bowlers and say, okay, I'm going to play cribbage with them or boo-ray or whatever it is. And we were babies.
Yeah.
I mean, I was 21 when we got married. Brad was 22. And so, I think that they could, Jim McMahon was our quarterback and his wife is still one of my very best friends in this world. They had 4 children. So Brad and I would go on every vacation with the McMahons in the off season. And we were the fun aunt and uncle with their 4 kids. And it was like, now, oh my God, this is great. There's 4 hands and 4 of their children. And so I just think, a little bit, I would say, in the beginning, too, is almost like we both sort of had stars in our eyes with some of these people that were our teammates. And I think that was endearing to them.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was endearing to them that, like, a lot of them liked Brad, and more than that, they respected him. And so I think those relationships are still strong.
That's really interesting. I think it's funny when you look back, some of those people in your life end up shaping so many different things that I think sometimes I've realized later, as I look back on those moments, which is pretty cool. It's just a constant reminder
like saying
about
that, like Nancy McMahon and I both walk fast. And so the Vikings played in Berlin, and I don't even know who we played in the preseason, but they dropped all of us wives off somewhere to shop, and she liked to walk fast and I walk fast. And next thing you know, the whole 6-hour shopping trip, she and I were together. And by the end, we're, writing each other letters. I can't wait till she gets to Minnesota with her 4 kids. And, during COVID, it was really important that Zach, the youngest, got married, and he called Brad and I, said, I know it's COVID, but I'm getting married to Jenny, and you guys need to go get your passports, and you have to come to Cabo because you have to be at my wedding. You were there when I went to kindergarten. And so Brad and I went through all the hoops and all the tests and all this stuff. And lo and behold, we're sitting at the head table with Jim and Nancy, and I'm thinking about little Zach. He was 4 years old then, and now he's grown up and getting married and a father himself. And it's just crazy the way life happens.
You talk about mentors a little bit. You modeled a lot of your, I say a lot, some of your parenting from Nancy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I
Yep,
mean, she was an
absolutely.
amazing mother.
Amazing.
And
Still
I feel
is,
like,
and
no, yeah,
grandmother.
correct. But it's like,
Yeah, a lot
I
of times
think
I'll say to myself, what would Nancy do
totally.
in this situation?
So since we're on the parenting topic, share a little bit about your three kids because it's really impressive, and I want to talk about what some of the principles or values are that you two rely on to in your parenting that might be interesting for people to hear.
One of my philosophies,
Well, first off, we have three kids.
right.
So Rex is a senior in law school,
Third year law school.
3L. And then Judge is a fifth year senior at University of Toledo, and Honor will be a senior at NYU.
Right.
Rex, out of high school, went and played quarterback at Syracuse University, and he was there for 5 years and graduated with a undergraduate degree, and went on to law school. Judge is playing football at University of Toledo and in grad school. And so
And then
we've got,
plays
and Honor
basketball.
plays basketball at NYU.
I think in
So they're 25, 23, and 21.
correct. And they all made straight A's, and
All through school.
both boys are Eagle Scouts. I'm more proud of that than being an Eagle Scout myself. Now that I've gone through it as a parent, it's much more difficult.
It's super impressive hearing about your children because they're accomplished academically and also athletically.
Yeah, they were straight A students in school growing up.
Raising the kids. I try to live my life not sweating the small stuff. It's like with my law firm, with NFL, with a lot of things. I really try to look at a macro and not get bogged down in the micro. Raising kids, I think both of us, we sweated the small stuff with our children. We really did. I mean, it was all micro all the time. And it took a lot of effort. It's a young man's game without a doubt. And thinking about all the effort. I mean, you talking about reading, we would read to the kids every night.
Well, back to Marty Hugel, the physical therapist, where
Right.
Emmett was that introduced me. He had these super stud kids. And I can remember saying to him, what's your recipe with these twins that scored perfects on their SAT and all these things? He said, you know what we did? We didn't let them watch TV. And he said, if you can make them not watch TV for the few years that they're born, their brains will myelinate. I mean, he was going on all this scientific stuff, but I remember taking that with me and thinking, all right, the kids are born. It was probably very hellish on Brad and I to not plop them down in front of a TV and do what we wanted to do. But we really didn't let them watch TV till they were like 5.
And here,
As we had baskets of books everywhere in the house. And I mean, there were times that, Saturday you'd watch a Disney movie or something like that. And we would go to the movies or we would sit down and watch a Disney sing along, or what were the other ones that were the old timey Schoolhouse Rock
Right.
videos, or DVDs, or whatever the things were. So they definitely watched certain things on TV, but it wasn't like, the TV was not really on Monday through Friday.
Yeah, it wasn't the digital babysitter, right? So for your kids, you intentionally spent more time when they were really born right away on reading,
Reading.
not a lot of TV time. And
I mean, I would do those silly black, white, and red flashcards every single day, 3 times a day, because somebody said it's going to help them and their IQ, and it's going to help them later in life, and they'll have a longer attention span. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. I think we've both always dove in head first, that when we decided we were going to be kids, I think I read every book pregnant on like how to be a good mother, how to raise a smart child, how to do, how to do, how to do, how to do. And then when they were born, what reading lists should they have had read aloud to them by the time they were 5? Which so it was like it was almost like these little creatures came out, and I love my husband so much, and they were half of him, and it was like I don't know. I just want to give them the best chance I ever can in life. And if this book says, try this, well, then I'll be damned. Let's try it if it can make them have a good life. And I think again that how do you know when you've found the right one when your wants and needs become secondary to theirs, meaning Brad? I mean, think about it. I gave up going to medical school. I gave up anything and everything that I ever dreamed of because I loved this person more than I loved myself, and he was supportive all along the way and was supportive of anything and everything that I wanted to do. The same happened when our kids were born. Now I've got this man, and then I have the first one, Rex, and then I had Rex and Judge, and then I had Rex, Judge, and Honor. And it was like my whole life, I just want to do all I can, paddling in a canoe quietly behind them in the same direction they are as hard as I can.
Yeah. That is beautiful.
I think we did it.
Yeah.
I think we did it.
From a practical standpoint, I think we've always had a very open relationship with all of our kids. We've been very straightforward, with right and wrong and sex and things that are going to happen in their lives. Um, but because we both reflected, I think we're all of the same age where our parents they were doing the best they could, but it was kind of like there were really no reasons given why you had to do something. It was just you do this, you do that, and that kind of doesn't work this day and age. It actually, if your kids are not buying what you're selling, they're not gonna
Yeah.
they're not gonna do it. And so
It's
they
so
really
true.
and you really have to understand. So I think from an early age, I would tell the boys and daughter, look, if you what do you want to do? And they all wanted to play sports. They played every sport there was growing up. And I was like, okay, well, I said, this is what it's going to take. I mean, he goes, you may have friends that are out smoking dope and you're out doing whatever it is. But I promise you, there's somebody in Texas who's getting up at 6 a.m. who's working out, or there's somebody in Tennessee who's doing it. It's getting ahead of you if you choose to kind of go out and get drunk and can't be as productive as you can be the next day. I go, it'll
Yeah.
set you back. So with all three kids, or even with academics, it's like, look, if you want to go to these nice schools, or you want to be super successful and have great things that you want, I go, it's minor steps along the way, and you don't want to take 3 steps forward and 10 steps back, because you're living a life that just is not conducive to that. And they all bought into it from an early age. And so, but
Yeah,
that's the way it's got to be. They have to buy what you're selling in that sense, because you can't just simply say don't do this with no
right.
explanation.
I think it was hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Whether that's piano lessons,
Right, but
whether
I
that's
don't want them to think we're all
music
I don't
instruments.
want them to think we're this cliche group.
Well, no, no,
No,
but I mean,
no.
no, we're not a bunch of big cliches,
Right,
but I think no matter what it was, whether it's scouting, whether it's lacrosse, whether it's cheerleading, basketball, whatever it is, softball,
correct.
baseball, they all had to learn a musical instrument. So they all took piano lessons. Rex took it further and played guitar, and Honor went on to the drums, and whatever it is, it's like if you want to be the best at what you can be, you got to put in the time and you got to
Right.
work hard, but play and love hard too.
Well, I mean, I think terrific tips for parents, right? That are listening to hear how you guys approached it, because clearly you were very intentional with the way that you approached parenting, right? I mean, you read, you did research, you talked to people, and then you applied. So I think it's great to hear how you guys um, approach the subject, because right now you're so right. The TV has become the babysitter, and I agree with you, and the internet, and I agree with you, Brad, that in previous generations, it's like, well, mom or dad said go do this. In my for me in my situation, I would never question.
Right.
and
Yeah.
then right, and then now it is you do need to explain the why, and I think you get more out of it by
Hmm.
explaining the why, right, and the
Right.
kids get
Well,
more.
and
Yeah.
you know, and you make a great point. Sometimes I would sit there and say one thing, and as I'm trying to explain why, I'm thinking this is pretty stupid. And so after I would,
Yeah,
after I would say it, I'd be like, you know what, let's do that. That's fine because I can't really think of why you shouldn't. If you logically looked at the situation, um, the knee jerk reaction as a parent sometimes with certain things is like, no, no, no. And then sometimes, and my daughter's so smart, she would, well, why can't I do that? And she would give me reasons why, whatever it was. And I'd be like, God, she's beating me. You know what? You changed my mind. You're right. Look, it's okay if you do this.
yeah, I can tell you that I've definitely been there myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we sort of kind of had this plan, but kids, you can't really plan. You have to let it go. And I think that probably one of the best things that was a reality sandwich to me is once we were big public school advocates. So our kids went public school all the way through. And I guess maybe Rex's sophomore year, or maybe it's probably his sophomore year, maybe freshman year. I saw this thing in the school newspaper that goes to the parents that said they needed some people to sign up to be mentors. And so I signed up to do it. And at this point, I've never gotten away from plant and not mentoring. I think I've probably had
Plant is a high school.
as a high school
Yeah.
8 kids, but then you end up getting their little brothers and sisters, so maybe a dozen kids. But I started mentoring, and some kids were in the projects and some weren't. Some were females, some were males, some were athletes, some were not. And I think it was once I came in contact with some of these kids and the things that they would talk to me about and the things that they were concerned about were really instrumental in me having my eyes wide open as to what my kids might be thinking about besides what I'm just thinking they think about. And I think that's one of the things that helped us as parents be able to talk about when they were, what was Rex then, I guess, 14 years old,
15.
start bringing up things like, one of the gals I mentored was pregnant. And it's like, okay, well, let's just talk about that. Like, you don't really
We
think at that young age.
talked about
I mean,
that.
obviously, we talked about that,
Yeah.
but it's these types of life situations that you come in contact with that sort of made me say, hey lady, you think you got all the answers and you think you've read all these books and you think you've done all this stuff, but you really haven't. And so I think that that's been something that's helped shape me as a parent and as a person, um, just kind of working with some other people that might have a hard time helping themselves.
Monica, what is the Culpepper's family philosophy in terms of parenting on public school versus private?
Yeah. Well, I
um,
mean, obviously, you want to go to a good public school. I mean, unfortunately, there are some schools that are not as good as others. But to us, I think the books is part of it, obviously. But being surrounded by all kinds of people gives you a better
right.
sense of the world, and not just going to school with a bunch of privileged people. I think going to school with all, I actually went to private school until eighth grade, and I went to public school in high school up in Tallahassee. And my biggest eye opener was I was probably one of the smartest ones at the private school, and I was when I went to the public school, I definitely was one of the smarter ones, and there were a lot that weren't as smart. However, there was quite a few that were a lot smarter than me, and I was kind of like, "Whoa, this is a big world," and just the different socioeconomic backgrounds, and football helps me with this too. You growing up in the locker room, and you're all equal, and yet all these different, ethnicities
Socioeconomic conditions.
but we're all doing as your Monica was saying, we're rowing the boat in the same direction, so we play as like a team and you become a family. So for us, and then maybe it's not the same for everybody else, but our opportunities here in Tampa were
Right.
three fantastic schools. Although there are many that live where we live and send their kids to private schools, we wanted our kids to kind of have an eye-opening experience as far as like with kids that are not the same as them. Some are better, some are worse, or whatever. But it kind of gives them, I feel like as they are adults now, they're able to cope with a lot of different situations and have confidence in themselves because of their surroundings in their high school and middle school and grade school, not just from their academics. It all kind of goes hand in
Right.
hand together.
And I
And
think,
that's
yeah.
part of it. To me, the social part of a public school is as important as the academic part.
And I think they all learned empathy without having to teach it. And,
Yeah.
I just, I think, especially these days when I watch what's happening with younger kids, isn't it great that they can come in contact with a lot of things that are going to be big time life situations and they're still at home with us instead of the lights going on when they go off to college and they're not at home and they don't have their parents to bounce things off of all day and all night in and out of the house as they come and go with their activities and their friends and their sports.
I get it. I nothing against private school, but I made the same decision in terms of for my son. And I think some of it's how you grew up yourself too. I grew up as a Navy kid, and living in different Navy housings and different situations, and I value what those experiences were with the my friends at school. And I think that shaped me also, right, in terms of parenting and recognizing those are experiences you want your kid to have too.
The education doesn't stop once you leave school. It continues at home.
Right.
The situations they run into in a public school, I think we're able, like you said, we're able to kind of talk them through it so that when these situations happen in real life, it's not some shocker and they're not alone on it.
Right.
I was curious to ask you about this, Brad, when you transitioned from the NFL to becoming an attorney. How did you deal with the the nutritional aspect? I'm really curious about this because
Wow.
so many people you hear about the NFL, how many calories they have to consume and what it takes to be the size you need to be to compete at the right level. And then going back to, real life post football. What's that like?
As soon as I came in and told Monica I was done, I weighed about 280, and within 6 to 7 months, I was almost down to 200, or down to 200. It just, I don't know. You don't see that many 80 and 90-year-old people that are 280 pounds. Um, my knees were, I've had 15 surgeries on all my body parts. I've had my knee replaced. I've had 10 knee surgeries on both. I've had hip surgery. I've had low back surgery. But
Shoulder surgery.
right, but
That,
but losing
that's
losing the
incredible.
weight helps all my joints without a doubt. And I just kind of got addicted to working out. I mean, the effort I put into lifting weights and being, I had to force myself to eat to be an NFL football player as a defensive lineman. I mean, the feeling you would have on, like, say, Thanksgiving, I had to do that like 4 days a week, and have that
Wow.
stuffed feeling, just to maintain the weight. And so I was so happy to lose weight and get down to fighting weight. But then, there's no,
His waist went from a 42 to a 33.
well, it's 33
And
now. It went down to a,
He was a 42 waist when I
that
married him.
was 40.
At 42.
No, the problem with that is, like, you go down to like 36 and you think, okay, but you can't. I don't want to
I
have
better get some new clothes.
no, I don't want to have one pocket in the back, so you got to get new clothes. And all of a sudden, you go down from a 36 to a 32, and I got to get all new clothes again. That was
Right.
but just the whole health lifestyle, just, I don't know. It's people ask, what'd you do to lose weight? And it's like, I burned more than I consumed.
Right.
There's no quick fix about it. There was no Ozempic. And I
Right.
don't know that that's the answer either, but you know, it became my major focus. If I wasn't going to lift weights, I might as well stay in good shape. For the longer I can live, the longer I can be around my kids and my wife. And
Yeah.
she's always been in amazing shape. So at that point, I needed to catch up with her.
Oh, you were in good shape.
But you know what's interesting too? So I remember Bryant Gumbel, and you probably could Google it, on Real Sports, did an interview with myself, and I think it was Frank Warren. Um, Frank he was a defensive lineman for the New Orleans
He was
Saints.
coming and doing a piece on losing weight after you retire
Yeah,
from the
so this is like
NFL.
2002 or
So it's
2003.
kind of one of the things
He
he
came.
does, CBS or
No, it was on HBO, Inside
Oh,
Sports.
okay.
it was Real Sports on HBO. I used to watch that.
Real
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sports.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway, this affected me too. Frank had gone the opposite direction and was like 450 pounds or 480 pounds. And I had gone down and I was like at 200 pounds. And they interviewed us both about why we did. And Frank couldn't help it because whatever. But before the episode aired, Frank died. And it was just kind of like,
Wow.
huh,
Oh my
this is,
gosh.
it's, you got to try to stay in shape because you go one way or another. And the heavier you are, the harder it is on your joints and the harder it is to live.
Not to mention the kids I mean, we hiked and biked and snowboard and water ski and tube
Yeah,
and
you've been very
wakeboard.
active.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
play every sport. He coached every single thing. I coached softball for my daughter. I would just be a good rebounder at basketball, fill in if the coach wasn't there for that. But I think we just kind of ran around with our kids and rode bikes every night after dinner. And
The easiest way to lose a lot of weight, go on Survivor.
yeah, that's another good way.
So
Yeah,
Survivor was a pit stop for you two.
right.
And
Yeah, lo and behold, right out of nowhere, Brad walked in from the office one day and said, "Hey,
No, well,
I'm going to play Survivor."
yeah, it was it was more like this. So, Jody, in fact, had contacted somebody and found out that I was a scout,
Did she
Eagle
call
Scout.
you at the office?
Yeah, something like that. And anyway, they called me about Survivor and to see if I would want to play and put an application out. And then about a week later, someone within the CBS brass had Googled me and seen a picture of my wife and said, "Hey, you know what? Instead of applying for Survivor, why don't you guys apply for Amazing Race?" And I was like, "Fine." I was like, "Let's do Amazing Race. We would love that. It's a life experience. Let's do it together." We sent the application in. For whatever reason, they went a different direction. So then they called me and said, "Hey, back when the Amazing Race isn't going to work. Let's get back on the Survivor situation." And I go, "Okay, sounds good." And they go, "But we don't want you. We want your wife." And I was like, "Ooh, okay, well, she's never even stayed in a tent before, but I'll
wait a
I'll
minute,
tell
wait a
her."
minute. So I want to make sure I got this. So Monica, you guys are about to go on Survivor, but Monica's never even stayed in a tent.
Well, I remedied that because I went
Okay.
home that day and said, "Hey, Monica, you remember we were talking about the Survivor and then Amazing Race?" I go, "Well, the Amazing Race didn't work out, but they want you to do Survivor and you need to do it." And she's like, "What? I'm not doing that." And she goes, "I've never even
I
stayed in
said,
a tent."
I'm sorry, Brad. I am not playing Survivor. I have not ever stayed in a tent. I was like, I can't do that. I said, no way.
I said
That
that this weekend I went to a barrier island and we stayed like 4 days and we fished and camped out. The kids loved it. They're all ready to go on Survivor now. But anyway, I took her out and got her in the heat and said, "Oh, this is what you can do." And she
you taught
reluctantly.
me how to gig fish, clean fish, cook fish. I was catching minnows. I was eating them alive.
Crab.
You taught me how to make fire. We
You
went
ate a
on.
minnow. You ate a minnow alive.
Oh yeah. We went to Egmont Key for 4 days, very little provisions, and Brad said, "Okay, I'm going to teach you how to do this." And I think basically what happened is that we were going to play Amazing Race, but something happened to the 40-year-old woman that they needed to go play Survivor, and so they thought we're just going to change gears and we'll get Monica. Because I had not applied to that. So quickly I did. Quickly I went to LA. Right after that, we were cast. I literally think it was like 6 weeks
It was fast.
and I left. And I remember thinking, I don't want to do this. And you talk about it kind of all weaves back to kind of making my life really all about how I can make Brad be the best football player, the best lawyer, the best human that he can be. And then my life transitioned from that into now, can I continue with that? And then how do I make these three little kids the best that they can be? And so Brad said, "This is why you're going to play Survivor. It's always been about
Yeah.
me.
Go be selfish.
And it's always been about the kids. And this is a chance for you to go be you and do something without us. I'll stay home with the three kids. You go play Survivor. You've got this, and I'll teach you what to do."
Oh, But
Wow,
anyway, she's gone
that's
for
incredible.
50, she's gone for 50 days because, it was 39 days for the island, but then there's about 5 days before and after that you're gone. I was with a 10-year-old, 8-year-old, 6-year-old for 50 days. And I have mad respect for single
And a
parents
dog.
now. No, and a dog. Oh my God, with no contact. I guess at least in the military you can have contact. I had zero contact with my spouse, with whom I love more than my kids.
Yeah, with the
Um,
mother.
oh no, no, and it was crazy. So I
Were
listen.
I
you
It's
would
worried,
just
Monica?
have ropes
Were you-
out there, and
what
I
was
would say Brad is really the survivor at home with my three kids and our dog. Way more than me. This is great. There's no lunches to make. There's no homework. There's no practices. There's no pickup.
so needless to say, the next time she played, I went with her, and I was like, okay, we're going to play together.
Right.
I'm not doing this kid thing again.
Right.
I want to ask you to, you guys have been married 32 years, and we talk
Right.
about small things that make a difference in your life's journey. What what would you share when you think about your marriage? What can you share with people that has made it so successful over such a long period of time?
Well,
Well,
I'm going to tell you this first.
okay,
Real simple, more cliches. What it took to get him, it takes to keep him. I know I have to say the cliches because there are a few
I am
things
not a
that
cliche.
he is not, but there are a few things that I've always thought about. And some NFL wife told me that, and I can't remember who it was, but it's true. And she said this, just always remember, and they'd been married a long time, and I don't know who it was, but she said, um, uh, being a good mom does not make you a good wife. And you can put as much time that you want into your kids and everything else, but still find time and cultivate that relationship with your spouse.
That
And
is such good
that
advice, Monica. Yeah.
I would definitely say, and this is probably just, we both give each other a lot of confidence. And it's genuine. There's not any jealousy. There's not jealousy of something she would do. I'm 100%. I mean, when we played Survivor, she did way better than me, and I was so happy for her. It was not a matter of that. But we don't have jealousies about people or about anything. We have a lot of confidence in each other. We prefer each other, which I think, I don't know if that's luck or it's just kind of we grew up from nothing. And I think maybe couples can go like that through no will of their own. And listen, if someone goes like that, don't try to make it fit if it's not going to fit. To me, I think this is, we only have one life to live. I don't know what's after this, but I know this is here. And if I was unhappy or if she was unhappy, it's okay to do whatever makes you happy. But for whatever reason, we've grown like this, and we prefer each other, and we're absolutely conscientious of decisions we make, including the other one in those like thoughts. Like if I've ever got to do something, my first thing is, what would Monica think of this? I never think of something singularity. I mean, like just with myself, I'm always thinking, okay, how's this going to affect her? And then I think of my kids next.
right.
But there's no decision that's made. In fact, I prefer all my decisions that are going to make her happy, over myself. But usually that coexists.
Right.
You two, just knowing you two from the conversations we've had, you both put work into it. I mean, and at the same time, it seems effortless. So I think some of that's the magic,
Yeah,
that you're
but
seeing.
it's like this morning. I don't know. I was getting dressed, and Monica was talking to the dog and said, "Hey, I'm scoot over. I'm going to make this bed." And I immediately, I was about to take a shower, put on a towel, and said, walked in to help her make the bed. That's just, I would always do that. There's never a situation
I
that I
think
wouldn't
we're
want to help.
teammates. I
Yeah.
think we've been teammates from such a young age.
I mean, with dishes too, like there'll
Yeah.
be something I can tell she's tired, and I'm like, stay there, I got it, or cooking. I've cooked every breakfast for the kids since they were ever born. I'm a breakfast guy. Um,
And I'm talking good breakfast at 6 a.m.
It's
The kids'
good, huh?
friends would spend the night on school nights and say, "Oh, you got to go. Papa Culpepper, he's got eggs, bacon, pancakes. He'll make you an omelet if you want. He's got multiple kinds of cheese. You can be specific."
And,
like they all know.
on the rare occasion when you let me do laundry, I'll do laundry. But
yeah,
she's a
yeah.
laundry machine.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know. But just when you first said that, I was just thinking about this morning. there's no way I would, obviously there are plenty of days she makes the bed without me, but, I was in there about, and I was like, honey, I'm going to go help her. And it was almost, I didn't even really think about it. It's just, this is what I do. I'd rather help her, do whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. A lot of other couples, but I can't tell if we miss out because we don't do this or if it's a good thing. Brad doesn't really go golf with the guys on the weekends. He doesn't go to guys' trips. He doesn't go and
Right.
do those things. And I don't go to bridge club or bunco or book club or any of that. It's like we just got to do our kids and do each other. And then this age and stage of our lives, we had this crazy run for what was Survivor, like 5 to 10 years
Yeah.
in
All
the middle of our life. Because
from
I played by
2012 to
myself,
2000.
then we played together, then Brad played by himself, and the kids were so they loved it. They loved every bit of it. But it just I don't even know where I was going with this, but it
At
just
this stage.
yeah. Oh, at this stage, we each don't have our little individual thing that's going on that we leave each other. We do things together. And with their sports, we're really gone from September to March because you end up with March Madness for basketball and football season starts in September. That we travel every weekend to go see them. I mean, they're our little
Yeah.
people. And so we're there after the game, whether it's a great game and they've had 3 sacks and 11 tackles and they're flying high, or damn, I threw 2 picks in the game and we lost. I mean, it's like I think it's like, we're there and we're there for them, and it matters to us whether it's the highs and the lows, because as you know, in everything, it's not always high, and
Well,
and there are a lot of lows, and I think I'd rather be there for the lows than the highs because they got their friends and everything else. But
Yeah.
we just are with each other. And I can't tell as we age, because I look to both of our parents and they're both still alive and they're both in their, all four in their 80s. I have a great aunt who's 100. Um, and I think, if something happened to either one of us, how lonely we would be. I mean, we
well,
would
no,
have
it
the
would be chilling.
kids, but I don't have this like giant network of ladies that I get together and do things. I guess you would make those friends later. I don't know.
Well, I mean, obviously we do stuff with other people sometimes, but
Yeah, other
I'm always,
couples.
no, I'm always, if I'm ever without you, it's almost like whatever I'm doing doesn't
It
really
didn't
happen.
happen.
No, it's
Yeah.
like unless I'm sharing it with you, whatever it would be. I've had to do some business trips or what have you, or
Right.
you went to a game, you've been to a game when I had my knee replaced, and it's like I
Right.
remember you texting me, it's like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. You were in the Boston area, but it's like if
Yeah.
he's not there or I'm not there, it's kind of like it's not worth it.
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously if our kids are, then it. But that's again because we kind of prefer each other, and I don't know if that's luck or not.
Or because we were babies when we got married.
Yeah,
I
but
don't know.
plenty of babies get married and go like that,
Yeah. I don't know.
separate.
No, I mean it definitely true. Plenty of people get together young and it doesn't work out. Matter of fact, most people recommend you wait a little while, right? So
I would advise my kids to wait and kind of make sure we got. I mean, I don't know if it was luck or what, but we nailed it on the head.
thank you for sharing that. I mean, I know it's personal, um, but I think it's something people can hear and potentially pull into their own lives, their own relationships. Um, so terrific advice on that. I would love to ask also about maybe just business advice relative to having your own law firm and making that a successful venture. Any 2% factor moments for you two together, as well as at the firm, that have been the difference between that business choice that you both made together to be successful versus it not.
Well, I mean, I hate to get into any kind of cliche stuff because that's, yeah, from Mel Brooks. Head him off at the pass from Blazing Saddles. I couldn't see myself going into a profession for any other reason than I prefer what I'm doing. Just for money I'd tire of that, especially as I get older. And I've been doing this now for 20, 23, 21 years. Um, I like what I do. I'm a personal injury attorney, and it makes sense to me. People get injured, and I'm able to help them. Um, there are a lot of law professions that I would not want to do where guys have to pound the clock and be there at 8 a.m. and hourly bill and do whatever. But maybe they love it and I get it and don't do it. But there's no profession I think more important than money to me is doing something I enjoy. Because again, it goes back to, this is all we got. And if I was just pushing a time clock on, something I didn't enjoy, I think the money will come, or whatever your lifestyle you will enjoy your lifestyle if you're able to be in a profession that you prefer. Just kind of like a
Mm.
spouse. I couldn't be in a profession that I didn't meld well with. My oldest son's going to end up going kind of the same profession. My father practices law with me. He's 81 years old, and of course
Oh, really?
comes and he comes and goes, and he's in North Carolina.
Would you hire him 10 years ago?
No, it's like 12 years ago.
Right.
And so I
So
think I have
is your father-in-law? Your father-in-law came on board in his 70s?
no, my own father,
Is your
Bruce
father?
Culpepper,
Yeah, that's
and
so cool.
we just tried a case. He and I try cases together. We tried a case 2 months ago, and he's got so much wisdom. Um, I enjoy our relationship because he's at work, 10 days a week, 10 days a month, or, sometimes, 3 weeks a month. But I am able to interact with him on an intellectual level. And now my son is going to kind of go into the same thing. And we text all the time. He's actually interning at Morgan and Morgan, but he'll text me certain things and we'll go over values and certain stuff. And I have a great time. We laugh about same things. And, so, I don't really have advice about business or what have you. I mean, running your own business is not fun. I mean, it becomes difficult, especially when you have to let people go, and I don't like that at all. Um, but I just know that I'm so happy that was able to move into a profession that I enjoy and that I'm happy to go to work. But I'm my own boss, and I can kind of, that was the biggest thing when I started my own firm. My kids were of the age where they started to do little league and rec league basketball, and I really needed flexibility to be able to go and be scoutmaster at scouts and go take my daughter to all her AAU basketball games. So by, you know, going out on a limb and saying, okay, let me hang my shingle out and do it myself, it was able to afford me the time and
Yeah.
father time. It's undefeated. It keeps ticking no matter what, and I'm able to maximize my time with things that I enjoy.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the money came, and it all works well. But to me, primarily, it's the freedom I had, and the time I spend is more important to me than actual money.
Yeah. No, amazing. What a incredible like time together today. I feel like we've talked about marriage, relationships, certainly the NFL, sacrifices that you both have made, choices that you both have made together, and then transitioning into being parents and parenting advice that you've shared, and then also tremendous success in career. So
Yeah,
just really
I don't want
wonderful.
to end on a downer, but I would say I don't want anybody to think that we don't go through a lot of the same crap you do too. We have a lot of
I
Yeah.
agree.
difficulties in life. We've had our oldest son had cancer, and he's cancer free now.
5 years,
Um,
100 hours of
Wow.
but
chemotherapy.
and while you and I have really never had any major spats, but I mean, there's difficulties raising anybody. Our kids aren't perfect, and we run
Right.
into everybody's got their issues, and we have them too. So life is not, as rosy as we can all present it. But sometimes you guys got to make the best of bad situations and kind of move on. And I'm
Keep
a
on keeping on.
I'm a big believer of tomorrow. I don't really reflect that much, other than sometimes you can
Except
learn
for
from things.
today.
Yeah, no, correct.
Yeah.
I really don't do this very much. I just think about tomorrow. My
Yeah.
quote to all my coaches was always like, um, "You're only as good as most of the coaches would say. You're only as good as your last game," and I would say, "You're only as good as your next game."
Hmm.
And that's kind of how I live my life. I'm only as good as my next game, no matter what it is.
No, and I think you're right. I think, in an interview like this, you talk a lot about all of the good times, but I think you're exactly right. There's a lot of times that things are really, really hard.
and mundane and what happened.
Yeah, and then you have sad things that happen, that just don't make sense, and you question and you ask, and I just feel so fortunate that some of the very, very serious life-threatening times that we've gone through, that we've had each other
Correct.
to lean on, and such a strong foundation that it's like, all right, because our kids have been injured in their sports, which matter more to them than
It was
anything.
like a bumper sticker I saw up in North Carolina. It says, "If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, except for bears. Bears will kill you."
Right. Bears will kill you. Yeah,
So one thing that stands out to me with you two is, I mean, we find ourselves talking about all the positive things, and like you've said near the end
right,
here, but there's been tough times. I, I'm sure there definitely has, except you two tend to take bad moments and figure out how to fix it, figure out how to make it better, figure out how to grow, figure out how to still persevere. And I think that's just a wonderful reminder for people that it hasn't been perfect. I mean, things have definitely been hard. And you talk about cancer and injuries and uh, being released from teams and having to put off dreams and careers. A lot of people get divorced over those reasons. And
right,
but instead you figure out how to come closer together, work together on it, get stronger and move forward because your next practice is the best one. Right. So
right.
I think it's just a tremendous message for everybody. And I can't thank you enough, both of you, Monica and Brad, for sharing your story, unpacking the micro decisions you made along the way in your collective journey together and as individuals. It's really been insightful.
Well,
Well,
Dan,
thank
we've
you.
enjoyed it, and you made us recall our past.
Yeah,
Not
it
something
was a
I do.
nice afternoon reminiscing. Not often do we do that because I married the guy who wants to think about tomorrow. So sometimes
Right.
it is fun and cathartic to do things like this and think, gosh, man, it's been a fun run. And I
Yeah.
guess
Look at so much.
I love my teammate, and I love my three kids, and just seeing how they dive in and support each other. And I just think, just being a good safety net to each other is
Well,
important.
we got 50 more years to keep going.
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
hope.
yeah, you do. At least one question we ask every guest on every podcast. Monica, I'll go to you first.
Okay.
What would you say to your 22-year-old self when you look back? What advice would you give to 22-year-old Monica?
Gosh. Oh my gosh, I don't know. Um, don't be afraid to try anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. Go for it, because I think, and that's something that I learned on Survivor. I really learned two things. The first was, you can have this perfect plan and you want everything to go the way it's going to go. And then you get thrown a curveball, and it doesn't. And you need to shift gears and change and figure out that, and keep on going and don't look back. But I think sometimes you can be worried about trying something that might make you feel uncomfortable or you're not sure about. And I think we only get one chance to go around in life. And I think that we will look back on life and be remorseful of the things that we didn't do. And I just see, like, my 100-year-old great aunt's birthday party. And at her age, it was fascinating to see my kids in their 20s and their girlfriends and boyfriends, who we also flew in, lean in as she told stories. And it makes you think, at the end of the day, all that matters is your grandkids listening to some stories. So go play Survivor, go try things that put you out of your comfort zone. So maybe you can be that much more interesting as an old fart, I mean, just being able to be a good storyteller is hopefully something that you can leave a little bit of a legacy from.
I
Wow,
would tell my
that's
20
wonderful.
year old
Thank you.
I would tell my 20-year-old self to not sweat it. It's all going to be fine, and there's going to be some super hot girl is going to say one word to you. Do not let her. Do not let her
This is going to
go.
change your life.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm definitely fooling him if at 53 he still likes me this much.
Well, you made the comment, you said I want to say it the right way. You said what led him here has got to keep him here, or
Yeah, that's right. What it took to get him, it takes to keep him.
yeah, it's so
Your
good. But
cliches.
Yeah, me and my
uh,
cliches.
Oh my
And
kids,
uh,
y'all rolling around.
yeah, the kids, the constant. It's too bad you don't have the three kids here. They would be rolling their eyes the whole time, mom. But then if somebody else says something bad about mom, they'll fiercely
Oh
protect her.
yeah.
But
next next
I
next
get together
episode.
with this five gets together and I am harassed from sun up to sundown. So it's a good thing.
I love it. The great advice, Brad, right? Don't sweat it. Everything's going to be okay. And I'm going to meet the woman of my dreams.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
all is well. Yeah.
It's like don't sweat it. You'll figure it out.
Well, in a lot of things, if I'm worried about something tomorrow or today or whatever, he'll say, "Hey, babe, like, kind of don't worry about it. We're all marching to the grave anyway. Like, just enjoy the day. It's gonna whatever's gonna happen. Like, just don't sweat it. You know." And a lot of times I laugh and think, "All right, I'll just put off the rest of these 10 things to
Yeah.
tomorrow."
Why do today what you can do tomorrow?
Right? Because you're marching to the grave.
Yeah,
All right. Monica and Brad, as we wrap up, is there anything that you want to promote for on the
no,
podcast in terms of listeners?
no, we're happy to do it. So if
Yeah.
somebody gets in an accident in Tampa, they know how to get a hold of me.
Okay.
John
All
Morgan used
right.
to end his speeches with, "Well, thanks you guys for having me, but I have one last parting word. If any of you are ever in an accident and hopefully you're not injured and you need somebody,
No more.
call Culpepper Curlin."
Right. But,
Call Culpepper Curland if you need any help. I love it.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. I really enjoyed today's episode with you too. Appreciate you both very much. And thanks for joining.
you got it, Dan. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dan.
For listeners, please like and subscribe for more stories about how these micro decisions and 2% factor moments have impacted people's story and journey along their lives. Thanks again.